Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Hope you're all in good form. Today I'm going to be telling you about a trip that we had, a day trip to Market Weighton, which is a small town in East Yorkshire and it's fairly near to Hull. I also picked up a few CDs there in a charity shop. I've been intrigued after reading online that Winston Churchill, who for me is the greatest ever Englishman, had spent his honeymoon in Market Weighton. It seemed such a bizarre and incongruous fact that I wanted to see for myself where he'd stayed. More on that later, but first I'll tell you about the CD finds. After a lovely trip there in the sunshine and a very pleasant lunch, we found a charity shop, and it's billed as a community shop, which means that it provides support to the people of the town, and I also think they run a weekly food bank. So it's actually my favourite type of charity shop, the smaller charities, as they don't have the massive admin overheads of the big chains such as Oxfam. It was very busy inside as well, with lots of friendly volunteers and plenty of customers. And there was a small annex which was billed as a media room with books, DVDs and CDs. And I took a couple of photos while I was in there. One of the photos shows the CDs that made the shortlist. I then whittled them down to 6 CDs, which I bought. 5 of those were single CDs, 50p each, and also a triple CD for £1. So that's what, £3.50 for the lot, which is about the price of a flat white in a cafe here in the UK. And I was disappointed actually that a comp that I picked out, Northern Soul compilation, was scratched to pieces, so I couldn't buy that one. First up we've got the B-52s and Whammy, and this was put out on the Island record label, and it's their 3rd album. It's not in the same league as their debut album, but it's still an enjoyable listen. Instrumentally, Ricky Wilson is all over this one with his keyboards, synth drums and choppy guitar. It's got a Spartan electro-pop sound. It's almost demo-like at times, which means that it hasn't really dated. Sadly, Ricky Wilson passed away soon after this album came out, and it left for me a gaping hole at the centre of the B-52 sound. Moving on, we've got Screaming Trees and Dust on the Epic label. It's their most mature sounding album. I like the electric sitar on the opening track, Halo of Ashes, which adds an appealing psych rock element. Mark Lanigan's touching vocal on Sworn and Broken really breaks my heart, and the clean production really harks back to classic 70s rock. And next up, it's a various artists compilation, The Beginner's Guide to World Music Volume 2, and this is on the Nascente record label. And it's a budget release, so there's no detailed liner notes, but you do at least get a paragraph on each of the artists to hopefully inspire you to dig a bit deeper on some of them. There's some legendary names on here. My only slight criticism is that there's an emphasis on releases from the late 90s and early 2000s. So for example, Manu Dibango's Song Makossa isn't the early 70s original, but a late 90s version. Next up, it's Peter Warlock and Capriol Suite, The Curlew and Others, and this is on the Art Nova label. And this was a really interesting find. If you have an interest in 20th century English melodic classical music and classical composers, this is pretty much essential. His career, both as a composer and a music critic, was blighted by drunkenness, womanizing, and an unhealthy interest in Aleister Crowley and black magic. Check out Capriol's Suite. And it's got 6 movements in just 8 minutes. The 5th movement, which is called Pied en l'air, is simply sublime. The strings place this firmly in the melancholy English pastoral sound. Also recommend the 8-minute Serenade for Strings, and which I think can sit comfortably alongside Vaughan Williams, Delius or Elgar. And moving on, this is Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, The Tracks of My Tears on Tamla Motown. And this is another budget release, so there's only a few paragraphs included in the liner notes. Musically, it's a good overview of their career, including, of course, all the classics. So here in the UK, The Tracks of My Tears, Going to a Go-Go, The Tears of a Clown, and I Second That Emotion were all massive hits. But you also get plenty of deep cuts as well. Check out, for example, the classic Northern soul sound of Whole Lot of Shaking in My Heart, and also the early 70s soulful groove of Point It Out, which has some exquisite guitar and drums and some lovely horn flourishes towards the end of the song. And the next one that I bought was Lightning Seeds, Jollification on Epic. And Ian Brodie, for me, is one of the UK's greatest pop songwriters. Earworm tunes on here include Lucky You, Change and Marvellous. I love the Lightning Seeds, though, they're most melancholy. Perfect is our classic example, and also Punch and Judy overwhelms me with the lyrics and the beautiful vocal harmonies. Going back to Winston Churchill, he and his wife Clemmy did indeed spend 2 weeks of their honeymoon in Market Weighton, staying at the Londesborough Arms, whilst being entertained by the nearby owner of Londesborough Hall. And Market Weighton, it's also famous for being the birthplace of Giant Bradley, who's the tallest man ever to have lived in England. And there's a life-size imposing statue of him made out of wood. And here's a few photos that I took whilst we were in Market Weighton. Market Weighton's surrounded by the rolling hills of the Yorkshire Wolds, and the area doesn't get as much publicity as the national parks of Yorkshire, the Yorkshire Dales, the North York Moors, and also the Peak District, which is partly in Yorkshire. But I think it does have its own unique charm, and it's definitely worth a visit. In fact, it would be a good base in Market Weighton if you are wanting to also visit York and Hull, because York is 20 miles from Market Weighton, as is Hull. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon. Take care.